to work with API, we have to basically create a Spring project. And whenever we work with a Spring Boot especially, then a Spring Boot provides a lot of inbuilt functionality. So for that, what we will do, we have one site, start.spring.io. We have to write start.spring.io. Then you will see this is a Spring initializer thing. That means it will create you project as per your requirement. Here you can see we need Maven project, so that dependencies, all the jar files and related stuff will be automatically available to the project. Language we will choose the Java. We have other languages also, Kotlin and Groovy. So right now we will select Java. By default, we have a Spring Boot version 2.4.4, let it be. And then we have here group. Group means we have to write here package name. Let's say I am writing com.user.api. Okay, com.user.api, and then project name is, let's say I am writing user API. So this is project name, and the same thing here it will be, and this is a description, so let it be. Next thing is packaging. So here you can create jar file or war file, it's up to you, and then Java language. So we are selecting jar. Java language is 11, let it be. Now here you can see this is a dependency. This dependency says that what kind of work you wanted to do with this Spring. So let's say I can say I wanted to do web things. So I'll write web here, web. So it will automatically say web, Spring Web. It is used to build web, include RESTful application using MVC. Spring MVC uses Apache Tomcat as the default embedded container. That means if you will use this web, in that case Tomcat will be inbuilt. Select it. Now here one dependency added. So to connect with the database, you have to add JPA also. JPA is basically Java persistent API, which is used to connect with database. So if you want to write Hibernate or ORM related thing, then you have to use a Spring Data JPA. I have added this one. Now next thing is I want to connect with MySQL. So I'll write MySQL framework. So MySQL, and then we'll have to select the driver for MySQL. So these three dependencies you have to add in your Spring initializer project. Then we don't need to do anything, just click on generate. After that it will download here zip file. Go to that. We will extract this zip file here. Now we have this one. Let's cut this from here and I'll put it, let's say, on desktop. So here we have user API. Now let's go to the desktop. We can see this is our user API project which is created. In this project, if you will see, this is pom.xml. This is the main file. This is the main Maven file where it is written everything. On file, new, import. After that you can search here Maven. Once you will search Maven, it will come this one, and under that you can select existing Maven project. Click next, browse, and then go to the desktop, select user API. Here you have to only select the project, click select folder. Once you will select this user API folder, there should come pom.xml. because in this particular file we have we have everything. We have description, what kind of project it is, everything is written here. Click finish. So now here you can see project is showing here user API project, and let's wait to complete the build. Right, build is completed. So now if you can see, project is created here. If I open the form.xml file, in this file here we can see our parent dependency is Springboot starter parent. This is the Springboot version. And after that we have here Java version 11, then Springboot JPA, web, and then MySQL. These three dependencies we have added, and one dependency by default added here is Springboot starter test, and then this is the Maven plugin. So three dependencies are added in this form.xml. Now what next we have to do is we have to go to the main file, and by default it will create one user API application.java file. In this file everything is written. Just what you can do, right click here, run as Java application. Let's just see whether your application is working or not. You are able to access it or not. So here it is saying fail to configure URL attribute is not specified in the embedded data source could be configured. Since if you will see in our form.xml, we have added here MySQL, we have added here data.jp. So whenever you will add this dependency, in that case you have to configure first data source, then your program will run. And data source you can configure for anything, maybe MySQL or any database. H2 is in memory database. You can configure for that also. So the next step is, once you will see that you are getting this particular message application failed, in that case first thing what we will do, we have to go into src main resource, expand it, and then open this application.property. And here in this application.property we have to write, configuration related to database. We'll have to tell the Spring which database you want to connect. So here spring.jpa.hibernate.ddl auto equal to update. So we have to use update, because once you will use update, that means you can perform here insert, update, delete, all related stuff. Then here we have data source URL, and in this URL you can write jdbc.mysql.localhost and then localhost :3306, and here we have to give the database name. URL you have to provide, we need to connect with user info database, then username is root, password is also root for the MySQL database. And once you will done this is enough. Now I want to add one more thing. I want to add one login. So if you want to enable login, we have to see. So here we will see login.level.org, and instead of Spring we can write hibernate.sql. Let's see whether it will work or not. So basically we have, what we are trying to do is, whenever we will perform any operation, then SQL should print on this console. So as of now we have configured application.property file, which is the first step that we have to do. Next step is, let's try to run this application again, and we'll see if it is working or not. Okay, so after that, here you can see this is running mode. Application is in running mode, and then by default Tomcat started at 8080 port. So if I go into the web page and write localhost colon 8080, enter. So now we are getting message white label error. Application has no explicit mapping. The application is running, right? But we don't have any mapping for the pages. So suppose if I write any other thing, then you will see error message that your port is not running. This site is not able to reach. But since your application is running and you are able to access 8080, in that case you will get this type of message. So the next step is, now our application is running, we have to write some code to connect, or we can say to show in that Tomcat. So what I'll do next is, we will create one controller. So let me just create class, and this class will be under user API, let's say controller. In this controller I can say user controller. Controller means this class will be used to write all the APIs. So similar to, you can see user data. Similar to this one, we will use here user controller. What I'll have to do is, we have to annotate with @REST controller. This is one annotations that you have to use if you work with Springboot API. We have to use @REST controller, and after that we have to also tell request mapping, that in request mapping, and then path equal to, you have to say slash, let's say I'm saying API, user API, something like that, user API. So this will be our path. Whenever you will run your application, after localhost 8080 slash, you have to write user API slash. After that only it will work. So you have to append this user API, right? And then that particular thing automatically reach to this. A Springboot will identify if you are using @REST controller, then request will directly reach to this one, this particular class. Now here you have to, we can add one GET request just to check whether this is working or not. So what I'll write, one method public, okay, before public you can write @get mapping. In get mapping we can say path equal to, let's say slash. So once you will press user API, and after that whenever you will press slash, then this particular method will invoke. And in this method you have to write @response body, response body, and in this response body public response body, and then we can say any message, a string get something like or something, say help, and we can return just wanted to check save it, and right? Let me run it again. So whenever you will run, you have to come to this one, user application. A Spring application dot run this class, and then you can run it. Let's see if I'll hit user API slash. In that case, we are getting high or not. Let's go here, and if I'll say user API slash, then you can see we are getting high. That means one API is working. Default API is working high, right? I can see here, welcome to user API. This message we will see. Whenever you will press slash, we will get this message. I want to see all the response. So I can say in get mapping all users. Okay. I can simply say all users, and in this way I can say get all users. Here I'll write user repository dot find all user. Find all. You can see we have one method find all. We will use this, and what it is returning? It is returning iterable user forms. I just copy it. Instead of a string, I will write iterable user form, and then we don't need to write this API message. Simply I can return it here. Return. This is all that we need to write. User repository dot find all, and then it will automatically return this user form. Save this, and then we can run it again. Okay, so we have to run user application. Let's see if it is working or not. That means right now if you will compare with user DAO, you don't need to write insert things. So let's say here we have add user, right? Where is add user? So in case of add user, you have to write these all things, right? Insert into table name and these all things. But in case of JPA, you don't need to do anything. You can simply call the method. That's it. Here also I am just calling the method, which is inbuilt method, and this is created. Now let's go and create one more entry here. So I'll create a new request, and the request name is, let's say I can say add all users, something like that, and then we'll give the name. So let me just copy this URL and put it here. Now I'll say the URL all users. Let me copy it and paste it here. Localhost 80 user API, and then all users. This is get request, so we don't need to change anything. Simply save it and then send the request. So now you can see output. In the response, we are getting first row, and then we have second row. So all the data we are getting here in the form of JSON. And this is used, post is used to create a new record, get is used to fetch the record. So here we are getting all the record, all the users. Similar to that, we have already inbuilt method. Let's say if you want to get a specific user, that particular thing also you can get. So let's say I can say instead of all users, I can say here get user. Simply I can say get user, and then I want to pass some ID. So if you want to pass ID, you have to write in curly braces. Now in this case, we will get data, and then you have to return it. So what method we will use? From here I will say find by ID. Find all, no, find all not. We will use find by ID, and here we'll have to pass the ID. So this is method name. Let's say I can say get user by ID, some name. Now whenever you will pass the data in the URL, in that case here you have to use @ path variable, and this will by default will be in the form of a string. So you have to write a string ID. That means whenever user will send here 1, 2, 3 or any value, then that value will be available in this variable, and then you have to convert this into integer dot parse int ID. So this will return, simply click on change method, right? So you can say find by ID, and now it will return optional user form. That's all you have to make change. We will copy this thing to the front end, and then we'll see that to the Postman. Let's close it, and then we can run it. We have to only write the basic logic, basic thing that what you want to perform with database. Table is also created, right? Table is also created using by adding @entity. Now, if you are using repository, current repository, in that case, everything is already available. Insert, update, delete, all things will already available. Let me just duplicate it, and then I'll rename it with find user by ID. Okay, and then here I can say this is our URL. So I'll just change this URL, API get users, and then here you have to pass the user ID. So let's say if I give 7, and then this is get request, so we can simply run it. Now you can see if you are passing 7, then you are getting only data for 7. If I get 8, then we will get data 8. Let's say if I give 9, in that case what it will do? We will get 9. That means data is not available. So you can see this is pretty forward. This is a very simple thing to do using API. Now after that, we have to write code that can fetch the data from the database, that can insert data, update data, delete data, right? First, what we have to do, we have to use, now let's create one repository. So I will create one class, and this class will be inside repository. So although you don't need to create separate what we say package, but it is always recommended that if you are using different thing, in that case you should create a new package, and inside package you can put that. So I called it user repository. Any name you can give. So I am just creating here user repository. In this user repository, what we have to do, we'll have to use the inbuilt function that is called CRUD curl. If I write it, paste here, and then okay, now it is same. So user, and then what we will do, we have to pass one integer, integer interface. Okay, this is our user repository interface. Now let's create this user model class. This model class is very important. What I have done, I have created our controller, and in that, after that we have created user repository. In this user repository, we don't have to write anything. Thus you can use public interface user repository extends current repository, and then we'll have to pass user data, user as an input, and then integer. Then this will be blank. That means you don't need to write anything here. It will automatically implement it. Now let's create one model, and inside model we will put user class. So I'll say this is model, and in this model we have user, right? or if you want anything that you want to put the name, let's say I can say user form. Okay, so the table will also create using the same name, user form, or so we'll see that, right? So we have here user form. Now we have here one class is created. This is simple class. We have to use Pojo class, so something we can say private integer ID, then private string name, private string email ID, private string country. Okay, then what we have to do, we have to generate the getter setter for all the methods. Okay, after that you can remove setter method for ID. Okay, this is a special requirement. We can remove this setter method for ID. So we will use ID only to get the method. We don't need to set it. That means somehow we have to auto generate this one. And currently we are working with, okay, so user form we have created. Let me just import that. Instead of user, I'll write user form. Okay. So now user form is fine in this particular class. Now we don't need to do anything. Let's come to this one. We want to connect this with database. So for that, what we will do, we'll use the Hibernate entity. So if you will use JavaX persistent entity JPA, then once you will run your program, one table will automatically created using user form, and then we'll have to tell that this particular ID is actual ID. This is ID, and then this ID is auto generated. So I'll write here generated value equal to generated value, and here I'll write strategy equal to generated type dot auto. This is what we have to write for ID. Rest name and other things will be the same. That means right now what I'm trying to say to the compiler, that once you will run application, just create one table using table named with user form. If you want to change the name, you can also do that. You can write here @table, and then you can provide the name. So you can say table and the name equal to this one. Then it will provide the name of that particular table. But right now I don't want to do that. So we have these things, and we are saying this ID will be auto generated. So we have created user form also, we have repository also created. Now we have here controller. So in this controller, we will write code to get all the data, to insert data, delete data, and post data, right? So first thing is that we can check first with add user, right? So let's start with add. And whenever we say add, we have to post the request. So I'll write @post mapping, and then I'll say path equal to add user. This is our mapping, and then we'll write here the same thing similar to this one. Public, let me copy paste. Public response body, and then from here we have to say a string also, and then we'll say add user, and in this user we have to get the user form, and user form we will get using @request body. You should have a request body. Inside request body we will get that user form, and then we can say this is user. So now we have get the user form. All the data will be inside this user form, and then after that what we will say, we have to use user repository, and to use that user repository we have to create the object. So I'll write private user repository, user repository. So let me write here. We have created this user repository, and now we have to initialize it also, this particular class. So to initialize, a Spring says that you don't need to create object equal to new user repository. Instead of that, you can use @auto wired. Once you will use @auto wired, it will automatically initialized, and you will get the data here. Now after that, we will use this user repository here. We'll say user repository dot save, and then in that what we will do, we can simply pass this user. Whatever data you are getting, you have to simply pass it, and once it will done, you can simply return the message that saved, something like that. So right now you can see save method is not available in this user repository. We have not written anything. All the things are already available in current repository. That means if I go here, we can see we have save method, then save all, find by, is ID is existing by ID, find all, count, delete all. Everything is already available. So we will use that feature in our controller. So now let's try to run it, and then we'll see about this, right? So how it is working. So let me close it and then run it again. Okay, now application is started at 8080 port. Let's check it. So since you can see we have here written post mapping, that means we have to send a post request, and to send post request we have to download Postman. So I'll write here Postman download. In Postman you can click here first link, then click download the app. Once you will download this app, it will show something like this, Postman. You can double click and open it. So now once you will open these things, let me just close other things, right? So this is the this here you will see all the projects which is already I have created for different purposes. You can also create here new workspace, and then select the first option, request, then give the request name. So let's say I can say add user. This is our first request, and then I need to create collection. Collection means this type of folder. So collection name I can say user API. Click save, and then click save to user API. Now you can see one collection created, user API, and here we have add user. So in this add user, we have to first send the post request, and then we have to give the URL. So URL is, it is running, our code is running on http:// localhost. So let's say localhost 8080. So our code is running on 8080 port. After that we have to write /user API. So you can get this from here. So /user API, and after user API you have to write /add user. I'll write user API and then /add user. We have mentioned here add user. Then you can see we are sending request body, and in this body we have form, and then in form I have written ID should be auto generated, and then we have to give the details for these three things. And also we have removed setter method for ID. That means from front end we have to go into this body and then select raw, and here we can select the JSON type. We can pass here body, and whenever we say body, then in that case we have to pass in this curly braces, and then we can say the first field is name. I can copy it and we'll go here and then say the double quote name. In name I'll write, let's say, Chandan Kumar. Then we have here email ID. We can use the same format that we have here. Paste, and then I'll say email ID, and then we have country. So let's put it here, country column. Now we have given this body, and inside body we have these things, right? Nothing else you have to change. Just select the post method, give the URL, and inside body in the form of JSON we can give this data. Once I click send, before that let me save it. Yeah. Now once I click send, it will reach to the controller, and inside controller we have post mapping, add user. It will perform this and then we'll save it here. So I am just trying to see the response here. So let's click send. Now message we get saved. So now let's go here and open MySQL command line. Let's log in it and then show databases. We have user info DB. So now we can say use user info and then show tables. In this table you can see now user form is created. So this particular table we have not created, it is automatically created here. And if I say select a string from user underscore form, you can see one ID, one data is created, ID equal to 7, India, this is, and then this one is the data. Okay, so ID is auto generated and one data is inserted here. If I'll send the request again, so let's say if I'll send here one request, okay, suppose I'll write here ABC, and then I can say here, let's say Bhutan. Click send, we will get response. Now let's check it again. You can see we have one more field automatically created, one more row automatically created, name, email ID, country ID, right? Sequence is auto generated, that's why we are seeing data like this way. Now since you can see we have not written anything here in this repository, still it is working fine. That means it should work other thing also. Update. So update method is tricky, although delete method is easy. But let's see update method. So for update, what we have to do, we will have to basically if you want to update any data, you have to use @put method. So we'll use put mapping and then path equal to, here I can say update user, and then we have to give here ID. That means we will tell that on which ID we want to update. Now after that we will have the same response. We can just copy this one and paste it here. So in update mapping, we will simply return that data is updated. Now here I can say update user, This is request body, and then in request body we will get user form, as well as we will also get this particular value. And if you want to get value from the path, you have to write @path value, and then we'll write here a string id. After that, what we'll have to do, since in this particular repository we don't have any method related to update, so if I'll see here, we have count, delete, delete all, delete by, find all, find by id, but you can see we don't have any delete method, we have only save method. That means we have to use save method, and in this save method only we have to tweak the user form. So how we will do that? First, what we will do, we will find this id. We will get the data from the database using this id, and then we will update that object. And for that we have to use this one. So if I'll write it, user repository dot find by, and here we will pass this id, then find by will return user optional user form, and if I'll do dot get, then it will return user form. So I can say user form, and then we can say existing data equal to. We have to use user repository dot find by id, and then we'll pass this id dot get. Here we will see existing data. Now what I'll have to do is we can update the value, we can update the existing data using this one. So what I'll do, existing data dot set name equal to, I'll do user dot get name. So we will get data from front end, or maybe from Postman to this object. From this object we will get the get name to the existing data, and similarly I'll do existing data dot set email id equal to user dot get email id. Then we have existing data dot set country equal to user dot get country. Now here we have set all these three values to this one. We don't need to set the id, since id should be same, and we'll pass this existing data to save repository. I think this should work, and then whenever we will say updated user, then it should return the updated user data. Okay, so let's try to run it. We have here update user. Let's go and create one endpoint. You can say one request, click add request, change it to, let's say I can say update user, and here I'll write the URL. In this URL I'll say this is update user, and then slash, and here we have to write the user ID. This should be the put request, right? We have passed this ID to the URL. After that we will go into the body, select the raw, and here we can pass the body. In body we have to pass name equal to, let's say here I can say, so we'll have to first check what was there. So let's say if I'll click fetch, or let's say if I want to update the user ID 8, currently we have on 8 name equal to ABC, email ID equal to this, country equal to Bhutan. So now I want to update, let's say, name and email ID. In that case, what I'll have to do, I have to pass name equal to, let's say I can say Rakesh, and then email ID equal to rakesh@gmail.com, and then country equal to. I have given all these three values. Since we have to pass the complete user form object, we have given here. Now if I'll save it first and then we'll send it. So we are getting 404 not found. Okay, maybe we have to restart this. So we have added new endpoint. We can run this again. User API, right click, run Java application. So whenever you will get 404, that means particular URL or particular page is not available. Right, now let's try to send it. We are okay. So here it is getting 415. 415 is HTTP status code, which means unsupported media type. That means here we have given text. Actually it should be JSON. If you will send JSON data type and then send it, now you will see 200 response, and then we are getting updated as a result. Let's see whether data is updated or not. So I will call this method. Let's click send. Now you can see on 8 we have these data, and if I click fetch and click send, now you can see we have these two data updated. This is very easy to work with Spring. We don't need to worry about anything. Just you have to focus on actual business logic that you want to write. We don't need to focus much on SQL query for update, delete, and other things. Already it's written, just you have to use that, and then that's it. Okay, next thing is we will see how we can delete the data. So deleting part is easy, just we have to use delete map, and then we'll have to pass the path. I'll say delete user, and then in this one also we can pass the data in the URI, and here I'll write public. So in delete case we can simply return the string, so I can simply copy this one. Let's just copy the body of this method. So here we have response for a string, and we can say this is delete user request body. So we don't need request body, right? We need only path variable ID, and then we can delete this. So we'll use user repository dot delete by ID. Here you can see we have delete by ID. You can also delete particular data using user form. So if you will pass the data, and based on the complete data it will delete it. Then we have also method delete all. It will delete all the methods, and here we have we have delete all, where we can pass this iterable. So if you are passing the form more than one data, then it will also delete that particular thing. Right now we will only use delete by ID, and here we have to just convert this ID into integer form, and then we'll put it here. Okay. And after that we can return. So it's very simple, right? We can restart this again. Okay, now we have to work with delete. So what I'll do, I'll let's say clone one of the request. I have cloned it, and now let's rename this. I can say delete user, and here I can say this is delete user slash, let's say I write 8. I want to delete ID 8. Here we have to select delete mapping. If you will not select this, in that case your request will not reach to this method. You have to pass the exact same thing, delete mapping. That means you have to send from front end or from Postman delete mapping, and it will reach to this. Now I have given here delete mapping, and rest other thing we don't need to give, just we have to pass here parameter in the URI, click send. Now you can see we are getting 8. That means data is already deleted. If I click fetch all, you can see now only we have one data. So suppose if I'll write again, in that case we will get internal server error. This data is not available, so we will get 500. To resolve 500, what we have to do, we should call first find by ID, and if ID is exist, that means data is exist, then only we should perform delete operation.